Welcome to Tales by Felix, where every story unlocks a new world. Remember to subscribe, like and share. Let's begin. The rain lashed against the towering windows of Blackwood Manor, a gothic sprawl of stone and shadow nestled in the misty hills of Veyron County. Inside, Lady Eleanor Veyron stood in a cream silk gown, her auburn hair cascading in defiant curls, staring at the man who was now her husband. Duke Cassian Blackwood, a billionaire with eyes like a winter storm, signed the marriage contract with a flourish, his pen scratching like a blade. The room was heavy with the scent of ink and unspoken resentment, the witnesses, dour lawyers and silent family members, watching like statues. Eleanor's heart thudded, not with love, but with the weight of a future she hadn't chosen. At 23, she dreamed of exploring the world, sketching sunsets in distant lands. Instead, her family's dwindling fortune had tethered her to this strategic alliance, a merger of Veyron ambition and Blackwood wealth. Cassian, 10 years her senior, was a mystery cloaked in power, his reputation as a ruthless financier preceding him. He hadn't spoken to her since their vows, his gaze fixed on the contract as if she were invisible. "Congratulations, Your Grace," the officiant said, his voice hollow in the cavernous hall. Cassian nodded curtly, his tailored suit accentuating his broad shoulders. "Let's be done with this," he muttered, striding toward the door. Eleanor's voice broke the silence, sharp and unyielding. "Am I to be a ghost in my own marriage, Duke Blackwood?" He paused, his back to her, the room holding its breath. Slowly, he turned, his gray eyes piercing. "You knew the terms, Lady Eleanor. This is business, not a fairy tale." Her cheeks flushed, but she held his gaze. "Business or not, I'm your wife. You could at least look at me." For a moment, something flickered in his expression, regret, perhaps, but it vanished. "You'll have everything you need," he said coldly. "Stay out of my way, and we'll both survive this." He left, the door slamming like a gavel. Eleanor stood alone, her hands trembling as she clutched a bouquet of white roses, their thorns pricking her skin. The manor's opulence mocked her. Marble floors, chandeliers dripping with crystal, yet it felt like a gilded cage. She wandered to a towering window, the rain blurring the world outside. The Blackwood estate stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of secrets she was now bound to. She whispered to herself, her breath fogging the glass, "What did I do to deserve this emptiness?" The manor looming like a specter, rain cascading down. A faint creak echoes from the shadows, a door opening somewhere deep in the house. 3 years passed, each day a quiet torment for Eleanor. Blackwood Manor was a paradox, breathtakingly beautiful yet suffocatingly silent. Its halls, lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors, seemed to watch her every move. Eleanor's life was a performance, smiling at public events as the perfect duchess, while at home, Cassian treated her like a stranger. His wing of the manor was a fortress, guarded by loyal staff who deflected her questions with polite excuses. Eleanor spent her mornings sketching in the rose garden, her only solace. One crisp autumn day, as leaves crunched underfoot, she overheard 2 maids whispering near the fountain. "He still visits her grave," one said, her voice low. "Every Sunday, without fail." "Poor Lady Eleanor," the other replied. "Living in her shadow." Eleanor's pencil stilled. The late fiancée, Lady Seraphina, whose name lingered like a ghost. Eleanor had heard rumors. Seraphina was Cassian's great love, lost to a tragic accident before their wedding. But no one spoke of her openly, and Eleanor's questions were met with tight lips. That night, unable to sleep, Eleanor paced her chambers. A soft rustle broke the silence. A letter slid under her door, its wax seal unmarked. Her hands shook as she broke it open. The note, written in elegant script, read, "Some truths are buried for a reason. Look closer, Duchess." "Who sent this?" she whispered, glancing at the door. The hallway was empty, the manor's silence deafening. She clutched the letter, her pulse racing. Was it a warning? A taunt? Someone in this house knew more than they let on. The next morning, she confronted Mrs. Harrow, the head housekeeper, a stern woman with eyes like flint. "Who has access to my chambers at night?" Eleanor demanded. Mrs. Harrow's lips thinned. "No one, Your Grace. Perhaps it was a draft." "A draft that writes letters?" Eleanor's voice was sharp. I'm not a fool, Mrs. Harrow. The housekeeper's gaze flickered, but she said nothing, bowing and retreating. Eleanor's resolve hardened. She would uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it was buried. Eleanor threw herself into her role as Duchess, hosting charity teas and smiling for photographers, but the emptiness gnawed at her. Cassian's indifference was a blade, cutting deeper with each passing day. Yet she noticed contradictions in his cold facade. At a hospital fundraiser, she saw him slip a check to an administrator, insisting it remain anonymous. Later, he pardoned a young footman caught stealing bread, his voice gruff but kind. "Why do you hide it?" she asked him one evening, catching him alone in the library. He was reading, his dark hair falling over his brow, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. "Hide what?" His tone was clipped, his eyes not leaving the page. "Your kindness," she said, stepping closer. "You act like a monster, but I've seen you. The orphanage donations, the servant you spared." He slammed the book shut, standing so quickly she flinched. "Don't mistake pragmatism for kindness, Eleanor. I do what serves the Blackwood name. Then why not let me help?" Her voice softened, pleading. "I'm your wife, Cassian. Let me in." His jaw tightened, and for a moment, she thought he might speak. Instead, he brushed past her, leaving the scent of cedar and whiskey in his wake. "Stay out of my business," he said, the door clicking shut behind him. The Grand Veyron ball arrived, a glittering affair attended by nobles and tycoons. Eleanor, in a sapphire gown, danced with Viscount Julian Drake, a charming man with warm brown eyes and a disarming smile. "You're wasted in this cold manner," Julian murmured, his hand light on her waist. "A woman like you deserves to be seen." Eleanor laughed, but her eyes drifted to Cassian, standing across the room. His gaze was locked on her, his expression unreadable yet intense. Was it jealousy? The music swelled, and Julian spun her, but Cassian's stare burned into her. Abruptly, he turned and strode out, leaving whispers in his wake. Eleanor excused herself, her heart pounding. She found him on the balcony, the city lights sprawling below. "Why did you leave?" she asked, her voice trembling. He didn't turn. "You seemed occupied." "Did I imagine that look in your eyes?" she pressed, stepping closer. "Or do you actually care?" Curiosity consumed Eleanor. The mysterious letter, Cassian's fleeting glances, the whispers about Seraphina, it all pointed to his forbidden wing. Late one night, when the manor slept, she crept down the east corridor, her candle casting flickering shadows. The door to Cassian's wing was heavy oak, its lock gleaming. She'd stolen a key from Mrs. Harrow's desk, her hands shaking as she turned it. The wing was a maze of dark wood and velvet drapes, eerily silent. She found a locked room at the end, its door carved with roses. The key didn't fit, but a loose floorboard revealed a hidden compartment. Inside was a locket, its silver surface engraved with Seraphina. Opening it, Eleanor gasped. A portrait of a woman who could have been her twin stared back, her eyes hauntingly familiar. Footsteps echoed behind her. "What are you doing here?" Mrs. Harrow's voice was sharp, her face pale in the candlelight. Eleanor clutched the locket. "Who is she? Why does she look like me?" "Some secrets are better left buried," Mrs. Harrow said, her voice low. "Leave this place, Duchess. Now." Eleanor stood her ground. "I deserve answers." Mrs. Harrow's eyes softened, almost pitying. "Not all answers bring peace." Back in her chambers, Eleanor couldn't shake the image of Seraphina's face. Was she a replacement? A pawn in some twisted game? The locket felt heavy in her hand, its secret screaming to be uncovered. The third anniversary gala was a masquerade, the ballroom aglow with chandeliers and masked faces. Eleanor, in a silver gown and feathered mask, felt like a stranger in her own life. Cassian, in a black mask, stood at the edges, his presence magnetic yet distant. Julian Drake, unmasked and bold, approached her, offering a glass of champagne. "You look like a star tonight," he said, his voice warm. "Why waste your light on a man who doesn't see you?" Eleanor's smile was tight. "You don't know him." "I know enough," Julian countered, leaning closer. "He's a fool to let you shine alone." Across the room, Cassian's eyes followed them, his jaw tight. When Julian led Eleanor to the dance floor, Cassian's posture stiffened. The waltz was intimate, Julian's hand low on her back, and Eleanor felt Cassian's gaze like a physical weight. Midway through, Cassian cut in, his hand claiming hers with a possessive grip. "What are you doing?" she whispered, her breath catching as he pulled her close. "You're my wife," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "Not his." Her heart raced. "You've ignored me for 3 years, Cassian. Why do you care now?" His eyes, visible through the mask, flickered with something raw, anger, desire, fear. "You don't understand," he said, his grip tightening. "Then make me," she challenged, their bodies swaying to the music's rhythm. He didn't answer, his silence louder than words. As the song ended, he released her abruptly, striding out of the ballroom. Eleanor followed, her heels clicking on the marble. She found him in the garden, the moonlight casting shadows on his face. "Why do you push me away?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "What are you so afraid of?" He turned, his mask gone, his expression raw. "You're still my wife," he said, grabbing her wrist, his touch burning. "Don't forget that." He released her and walked away, leaving her breathless in the cold night air. The Eleanor's stunned face, her fingers touching where his hand had been. The rain came down in sheets, a howling tempest that turned the road from the gala into a river of mud. Eleanor and Cassian's carriage, bound for Blackwood Manor, skidded to a halt, the driver shouting over the storm. "The bridge is flooded, Your Grace! We're stuck!" Their only refuge was a remote Blackwood lodge, a timbered haven nestled in the forest, its windows glowing faintly against the dark. Inside, the lodge was rustic but warm, with a crackling fireplace and faded tapestries. Eleanor, her silver gown damp and clinging, shivered as she stood by the fire. Cassian, his mask discarded, shed his soaked coat, revealing a white shirt that clung to his broad frame. The air between them crackled, charged with the unresolved tension from the gala. "We'll wait out the storm," he said, his voice gruff, avoiding her gaze as he stoked the fire. Eleanor, emboldened by the night's events, stepped closer. "You can't keep running from me, Cassian. What was that at the gala? You looked at me like—" "Like what?" he snapped, turning to face her, his gray eyes blazing. "Like I care." "Don't read into it, Eleanor." "Then why did you cut in?" she challenged, her voice rising. "Why grab my wrist and call me your wife? 3 years, Cassian, 3 years of silence, and now you act like I matter." He clenched his fists, the firelight casting shadows across his angular face. "You don't know what you're asking for." "Then tell me," she shouted, stepping so close their breaths mingled. "What are you so afraid of? Why do you shut me out?" A gust of wind rattled the windows, and the lights flickered, plunging the lodge into near darkness. Eleanor stumbled, her foot catching on a rug. Cassian's arm shot out, steadying her, his hand warm against her waist. For a moment, neither moved, the storm outside mirroring the chaos within. "You don't understand," he whispered, his voice raw. "It's not about you." "Then what?" she pleaded, her eyes searching his. "Let me in, Cassian. Just once." The lights went out completely, leaving only the fire's glow. Their faces were inches apart, his breath warm against her cheek. The firelight danced across the lodge's walls, casting Eleanor and Cassian in a fragile intimacy. The power outage left them stranded, the storm raging outside. Eleanor, still reeling from their argument, sat on a worn velvet sofa, her damp gown replaced with a blanket. Cassian stood by the hearth, his silhouette rigid, as if wrestling with words he couldn't say. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice low, almost lost in the storm's howl. "For the gala. For everything." Eleanor's heart skipped. "Why do you do it? Push me away, then act like you care." He turned, his eyes haunted. "Because I don't know how to do this. Not after her." "Serafina," Eleanor said softly, the name heavy between them. "Tell me about her." He hesitated, then sat across from her, the firelight softening his features. "She was everything. My world. When she died, I swore I'd never let anyone close again. It's easier that way." Eleanor's chest ached, not with jealousy, but with empathy. "I'm not her, Cassian. But I'm here. I've been here for 3 years, trying to understand you." He looked at her, really looked, as if seeing her for the first time. "You're stronger than I thought," he admitted. "I've watched you, your sketches, your kindness to the staff. I didn't want to notice." Her breath caught. "Then why keep me at arm's length?" "Because I'm broken, Eleanor," he said, his voice cracking. "And you deserve better than a man who's half a ghost." She reached for his hand, her fingers brushing his. "I don't want better. I want you." He froze, his hand trembling under hers, then pulled away, standing abruptly. "You don't know what you're saying." Before she could respond, she noticed a small leather journal on a side table, its cover worn. She opened it, her heart pounding as she saw her name scrawled inside, in Cassian's handwriting. "What is this?" she asked, holding it up. His face paled. "Where did you find that?" "It was here," she said, her voice shaking. "Why is my name in it?" He reached for it, but she held it back. The camera zooms on the journal, the page opened to Eleanor. The storm howled on, trapping Eleanor and Cassian in the lodge's flickering warmth. The journal lay between them, a silent accusation. Eleanor's fingers tightened on its leather cover, her eyes locked on Cassian's. "Why is my name in here?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. "It's nothing," he said, too quickly, reaching for it again. She stepped back, flipping it open. Pages of dates, observations, her habits, her sketches, even the way she hummed in the garden. It was a record of her life, written by a man who claimed not to care. "You've been watching me," she whispered, shock mingling with something warmer. "All this time, you've seen me." Cassian's jaw tightened, his hands clenching. "It wasn't like that. I was protecting you." "Protecting me from what?" she pressed, stepping closer. "The truth. Your feelings." A crash of thunder shook the lodge, and Eleanor stumbled, her foot catching on a loose floorboard. Cassian caught her, his hands firm on her waist, pulling her against him. The blanket slipped, revealing her bare shoulder, and his fingers lingered, warm and electric. Their eyes locked, the air thick with unspoken longing. For a moment, it seemed he might lean in, his lips hovering near hers. "Eleanor," he murmured, his voice rough, almost reverent. Her heart raced. "Don't pull away this time," she whispered. "Please." His grip tightened, his thumb brushing her skin, sending shivers through her. But then, as if burned, he stepped back, his face a mask of conflict. "I can't," he said, turning away. "Not yet." She stood there, breathless, her skin tingling where he'd touched her. "What are you so afraid of, Cassian?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He didn't answer, retreating to the fire. Eleanor sank onto the sofa, her mind racing. The journal, the touch, his words, it was too much, yet not enough. She whispered to herself, "What are you hiding from me, Cassian?" Morning broke, the storm reduced to a drizzle, but the tension in the lodge lingered. Eleanor woke to find Cassian gone, his coat missing. A tray of her favorite chamomile tea sat on the table, a silent gesture that made her heart ache. He'd remembered. She sipped it, the warmth grounding her as she replayed the night, the journal, his touch, his retreat. When he returned, his hair damp from the rain, he avoided her gaze. "The road's clear," he said curtly. "We leave in an hour." "Cassian, wait," she said, standing. "Last night, you can't pretend it didn't happen." He stiffened, his back to her. "It was a mistake. The storm, the moment, it won't happen again." Her temper flared. "A mistake? You wrote about me, watched me, touched me like I mattered. Was that all a lie?" He turned, his eyes conflicted. "I don't know how to do this, Eleanor. I don't know how to be what you want." "I want you to try," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm not Serafina, but I'm here. Isn't that enough?" He didn't answer, but his gaze lingered, softer than before. The ride back to the manor was silent, but Eleanor noticed small changes, his hand brushing hers as he helped her into the carriage, his eyes darting to her when he thought she wasn't looking. Back at the manor, she reopened the journal, finding a cryptic note tucked inside. She must never know the truth. Her blood ran cold. Whose handwriting was it? Not Cassian's. Someone else was watching her. The charity ball at Veyron Hall was a glittering spectacle, but Eleanor felt like a performer on a stage. She wore an emerald gown, her auburn hair pinned with diamonds, but her mind was on the note and Cassian's fleeting warmth. Julian Drake, ever charming, found her by the champagne fountain, his smile disarming. "You're radiant tonight," he said, offering her a flute. "But that husband of yours, still leaving you to shine alone?" Eleanor's smile was tight. "He's here, Julian. Somewhere." Julian leaned closer, his voice low. "He doesn't deserve you, Eleanor. A woman like you needs someone who sees her." Before she could respond, Cassian appeared, his presence commanding. "Drake," he said, his voice ice. "Step away from my wife." Julian smirked, undaunted. "Just keeping her company, Blackwood. Someone has to." Cassian's hand shot out, seizing Julian's arm. "She's not yours to entertain." The crowd hushed, sensing drama. Eleanor stepped between them, her heart pounding. "Cassian, stop. He's just talking." Cassian's eyes burned into hers, a storm of emotions, jealousy, possessiveness, something deeper. He released Julian, who bowed mockingly and retreated. The dance floor beckoned, and Cassian took her hand, leading her into a waltz. His grip was firm, almost desperate. "Why do you care now?" she whispered, their bodies swaying. "After 3 years of nothing?" "Because I can't stop," he said, his voice raw. "I tried, Eleanor. I tried not to care." Her breath hitched. "Then why fight it?" He didn't answer, his silence a wall. As the dance ended, she pulled away, her eyes blazing. "I deserve answers, Cassian. Why do you watch me? What's the truth I'm not supposed to know?" He froze, his face a mask of torment. The Veyron Hall ballroom buzzed with whispers as Eleanor's words hung in the air, her emerald gown shimmering under the chandeliers. "I deserve answers, Cassian," she repeated, her voice trembling with 3 years of pent-up frustration. "Why do you watch me? What's the truth I'm not supposed to know?" Cassian's face was a storm of conflict, his gray eyes dark with something unspoken. The crowd parted around them, their masks glinting like curious eyes. He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a quiet alcove draped in velvet curtains. The intimacy of the space made her pulse race, his closeness both thrilling and unnerving. "You want the truth," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "I've been watching you because I couldn't help it. Your sketches, your laughter, the way you defy this cursed manor, I noticed it all. But I kept my distance because I'm not whole, Eleanor. Not after her." "Serafina," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I'm not her, Cassian. Am I just a replacement? A shadow of your real love?" His jaw clenched, and he stepped closer, his breath warm against her cheek. "No. You're not her. You're more. And that terrifies me." Her heart stuttered. "Then why fight it? Why marry me and treat me like a stranger?" "Because I'm a coward," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I loved once, and it destroyed me. I can't survive that again." Eleanor's eyes burned with tears. "I'm not asking you to forget her. I'm asking you to see me." He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek, then froze as if catching himself. "You don't know what you're asking," he whispered, turning away. She grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Stop running, Cassian. Am I just a promise you kept, or do I mean something to you?" Before he could answer, a servant approached, bowing nervously. "Your Grace, a letter was delivered for the Duchess." He handed Eleanor a sealed envelope, its wax marked with a rose, Serafina's symbol. Eleanor's blood ran cold. She tore it open, her hands shaking. The note read, "To Eleanor, my successor. He married you for me. Ask him why." It was signed, Serafina. Eleanor clutched the letter, her heart pounding as she faced Cassian in the alcove. The ballroom's music faded, the world narrowing to the two of them. "What does this mean?" she demanded, holding up the note. "Serafina wrote this. She knew about me. Why did you marry me?" Cassian's face paled, his hands clenching. "Where did you get that?" "Answer me," she shouted, her voice echoing. "Was I just a debt you paid to a dead woman?" He ran a hand through his hair, his composure cracking. "It's not that simple, Eleanor. Serafina, she knew she was dying. She made me promise to protect you. Protect me. Eleanor's voice trembled. From what? Why me? Cassian hesitated, his eyes darting to the letter. She knew your family was in ruin. Your father's debts, your brother's gambling, they were going to sell you to the highest bidder. Seraphina, she saw you at a ball, saw your spirit. She said you deserved better. She made me swear to marry you, to keep you safe. Eleanor's knees weakened, and she leaned against the wall. So you married me out of pity? A promise to a ghost? No, he said fiercely, stepping closer. It started that way, but it's not why I watch you now. I care, Eleanor. More than I should. More than I know how to handle. Her breath caught, tears spilling down her cheeks. Then why keep me in the dark? Why let me think I was nothing to you? Because I'm afraid, he confessed, his voice raw. Every time I let myself feel, I see her face, her death. I don't know how to love you without breaking. She reached for him, her hand trembling. Then break, Cassian. Break with me. For a moment, he leaned into her touch, his eyes closing. But then he stepped back, his face hardening. I need time, he said, turning away. Eleanor stood alone, the letter crumpled in her hand, her heart torn between hope and hurt. The days following the gala were fragile, like the first buds of spring after a brutal winter. Eleanor and Cassian returned to Blackwood Manor, their silence heavy but different, less hostile, more tentative. They agreed to try, to bridge the chasm of 3 years. It began with small gestures, shared breakfasts in the sunlit conservatory, walks through the estate's sprawling gardens, where roses bloomed in defiant color. One evening, Cassian found Eleanor in the library, sketching the night sky. You love the stars, he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard. She smiled, her pencil pausing. They're constant. No matter how dark it gets, they're there. He sat beside her, hesitant. I used to watch them with her. But I haven't in years. He pointed to her sketch. That's Orion. My favorite. Eleanor's heart warmed. Show me more. They spent hours talking, Cassian pointing out constellations, his voice alive with passion. She taught him to paint, laughing as he smudged blue across his cheek. Their hands brushed as they passed the brush, neither pulling away. The moment felt like a promise, fragile but real. You're different when you talk about the stars, she said, her voice soft. Like you're free. He looked at her, his eyes unguarded. You make me want to be. Their hands, inches apart, the starlit sketch between them. The fragile piece shattered when Eleanor's horse bolted during a ride through the estate's woods. A hidden root tripped the mare, and Eleanor fell, her ankle twisting painfully. She lay in the mud, gasping, as Cassian's shout echoed through the trees. He was at her side in moments, his face pale with panic. Eleanor, stay with me, he said, his voice trembling as he lifted her into his arms. You're going to be fine. She clung to him, pain clouding her vision. I'm okay, she whispered, but her voice was weak. He carried her to the manor, barking orders at the staff. For days, he stayed by her bedside, reading her poetry in a low, soothing voice, his hand hovering near hers but never touching. Eleanor watched him, her heart aching at his tenderness, so at odds with the man she'd known. One night, as she drifted to sleep, a maid, Clara, lingered. He's never been like this, she whispered. Not even with Lady Seraphina. He's terrified of losing you. Eleanor's eyes widened. He loved her so much. Clara nodded. But with you, it's different. He's fighting himself. When Cassian returned, Eleanor reached for his hand. Why do you stay? She asked. You could let the staff care for me. He looked at her, his eyes raw. Because I can't leave you. Not now. Not ever. Her heart soared, but doubt lingered. Could she trust this man who'd kept her at arm's length for so long? As Eleanor recovered, Cassian surprised her with an invitation. There's somewhere I want to show you, he said, his voice hesitant but warm. He led her to a hidden greenhouse at the edge of the estate, its glass panels overgrown with ivy, a secret sanctuary he'd built for Seraphina. Inside, roses and orchids bloomed in wild disarray, their scent heavy in the air. This was her place, he said, his voice soft. I haven't been here since she died. But I thought, You might like it." Eleanor's heart swelled. "It's beautiful," she said, touching a wilting rose. "It just needs love." He watched her, his expression unguarded. "I used to come here as a boy, hiding from my father's temper. It was my escape." She turned to him, surprised. "You never talk about your childhood." He shrugged, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. "It wasn't much to talk about. But here I could dream. Of stars, of freedom." Eleanor knelt, planting a new rose in the soil. "This is for us," she said, her voice firm. "A new start." Cassian knelt beside her, his hand brushing hers as they worked. When he looked up, his smile was rare and breathtaking, like sunlight breaking through clouds. "You're changing this place," he said. "You're changing me." The greenhouse, the roses glowing in the sunlight, their hands dusted with earth. The greenhouse lingered in Eleanor's mind, its roses a symbol of their fragile new beginning. That evening, Cassian invited her to the Manor's observatory, a glass-domed tower overlooking the estate. The night was clear, stars blazing like scattered diamonds. Eleanor, in a simple ivory dress, felt her heart race as Cassian adjusted a telescope, his sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. "You've shown me your stars," she said, her voice soft. "Now show me your heart." He turned, his gray eyes catching the starlight. "I've been fighting this for years," he admitted, stepping closer. "Every time I looked at you, I saw a life I didn't deserve. A life I was too broken to claim." Her breath hitched. "You're not broken, Cassian. You're here, with me." He closed the distance, his hand cupping her cheek, his touch warm and deliberate. "Eleanor," he whispered, "I love you. I've loved you for longer than I could admit." Tears welled in her eyes. "I love you too," she said, her voice trembling. "I've waited 3 years to hear you say it." Under the meteor shower, their lips met in a kiss that burned away the pain of 1095 days. It was passionate, desperate, a release of every unspoken longing. His hands tangled in her hair, her fingers clutching his shirt, the stars bearing witness. They sank to the observatory floor, falling into each other's arms, the world fading away. As they lay there, breathless, Eleanor traced his jaw. "No more walls," she whispered. "Never again," he promised, his voice raw. The manor transformed in the weeks that followed, its cold halls warming with Eleanor and Cassian's newfound love. They laughed over breakfast, redecorated the library with vibrant colors, and planned a future free of Seraphina's shadow. But whispers of jealousy stirred. Viscount Julian Drake, spurned and bitter, spread rumors at a society luncheon, claiming Eleanor was a mere replacement for Seraphina, her marriage a sham. The gossip reached Eleanor's ears, stinging like a fresh wound. She confronted Cassian in the rose garden, her voice shaking. "They're saying I'm just a stand-in for her. That you'll never love me the way you loved her." Cassian's eyes darkened, his hands framing her face. "Let them talk, Eleanor. You're not her shadow. You're my light, my reason to breathe again." She leaned into his touch, but doubt lingered. "How do I know it's real? That I'm not just filling a void?" He knelt, taking her hands. "Every moment with you is new. You taught me to live again, not to replace her. I choose you, Eleanor. Every day." Her heart softened, and she kissed him, their lips meeting softly under the roses. But as they walked back to the manor, a servant handed Eleanor another cryptic note. "He's still hiding something. Check the locket." The rose seal chilled her blood. "Another one," she whispered, showing Cassian. His face hardened. "Julian's work. He wants to tear us apart." Eleanor gripped his hand. "Then we fight back. Together." She stood tall at the next event, addressing the crowd. "Cassian is my home," she declared, her voice clear. "No rumor can change that." Eleanor's defiance silenced the rumors, but the locket's mystery gnawed at her. Late one night, she opened it again, finding a tiny key hidden inside. It fit the locked room in Cassian's wing. With Cassian's permission, they entered together, the room revealing Seraphina's portraits and journals. One entry, dated days before her death, read, "I chose Eleanor for him. She'll heal what I broke." Eleanor's eyes welled. "She loved you so much," she whispered. "She wanted you to live." Cassian's voice was thick. I didn't understand it then. I do now, because of you. They burned the journals, letting Seraphina's shadow fade. That night, Cassian led Eleanor to the observatory, where he knelt, presenting a sapphire ring he'd designed, its facets catching the starlight. "Marry me again," he said. "Not for duty, but for love." Tears streamed down her face. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "1,000 times, yes." They renewed their vows in a private ceremony in the greenhouse, surrounded by roses and close friends. Eleanor wore a simple white gown, her auburn hair loose, while Cassian's eyes shone with unguarded love. "This is the marriage I always wanted," she whispered as they exchanged rings. He kissed her hand. "And the one I'll fight for every day." Months later, Eleanor felt a flutter in her stomach, a secret she carried with nervous joy. At a quiet dinner, she took Cassian's hand, her voice trembling. "I'm pregnant," she said, her eyes searching his. His face lit up, a rare, radiant smile breaking through. "A child," he whispered, pulling her into his arms. "Our child." The manor buzzed with preparations, its halls filled with laughter and hope. Cassian, once haunted, now glowed with pride, sketching nursery designs with Eleanor. One evening, under the stars, they named their unborn child Astra, after the constellation they'd watched together. But Julian's shadow lingered. He sent a final note, threatening to expose a fabricated scandal about Cassian's past. Eleanor, fierce and unafraid, confronted him at a public gala. "Your lies end here," she said, her voice steady. "We're stronger than your schemes." Cassian stood beside her, his hand in hers. "You've lost, Drake," he said coldly. Julian slunk away, his influence shattered. A year later, Blackwood Manor was alive with joy. Baby Astra, with her father's gray eyes and her mother's auburn curls, giggled in Eleanor's arms as Cassian hung a mobile of stars above her crib. The manor, once a cold prison, now echoed with laughter, its walls adorned with Eleanor's sketches and Cassian's star charts. They hosted a small gathering in the greenhouse, friends toasting to their love. Mrs. Harrow, once stern, smiled softly. "You've brought light to this place, Duchess," she said. Eleanor leaned against Cassian, her heart full. "We did it together." That night, they stargazed in the observatory, Astra sleeping between them. "We found each other in the dark," Eleanor said, her hand entwined with his. "And we'll never lose each other again," he replied, kissing her forehead. The end.